I want to let you know that, as Deanna said, I am part of a team. I am not the chair of the team. I am one part of the team who is with you today. And this is the Launch Out team. And the brief background for Launch Out is that many of you will remember last year at annual conference. In fact, 2 years ago, in 2016, the annual conference approved $60,000 to conduct a feasibility study to determine our readiness to support a major fundraising campaign. And so that feasibility study took place from 2016 to 2017. In the process of doing so, what they discovered is there is support among the annual conference for a fundraising, faith-raising campaign. But the questions that arose persuaded the leadership to think that there were not sufficient plans, to outline the program. And there were doubts about how much the program could raise, what the specific objectives were, and this was the result of scores of interviews and several group listening sessions. And so last year's annual conference approved that the team continued to work this past year, heading to our annual conference this year, to clarify the desired outcomes as a result of a fundraising campaign, to develop better sense of strategies to achieve those goals, and to describe more specifically how the funds resulting from a campaign would be managed and dispersed. In other words, basically, we had to put this in terms of mission and ministry. So that was approved at last year's annual conference, and the task was to come to this year's annual conference with a specific proposal and to capture the excitement for the program along with the specifics of how this can allow us to do better ministry in the years ahead in the Wisconsin Conference. So I just want to very briefly mention the other members of this team. They include Howard Hinsman, Tina Itzen, Peace Kim, Allie Scott, Amanda Stein, Michelle Vernick, Tamara Wims, and Bill White. And we have been meeting fairly regularly since before Christmas, and our work continues in conjunction with the ministry teams and boards and agencies, as well as other members of our church, to move forward in a way that we can compel a vision together of what ministry can look like in the state of Wisconsin in the years to come. The last time we did a campaign of this magnitude in our conference was a long time ago, seemingly in a galaxy far, far away. It's all the way back to 1996 was when this vision began, a campaign that was called the Fund for Discipleship. That's when that work started. Of course, it was impacted by 9/11. However, the results of that campaign resulted in raising a little bit over $6 million. And the fruits of that campaign can continue to be seen in missions and ministries that exist to this day at our Wisconsin Conference. However, when you think about how many years have passed, it is generally considered that a conference should have a financial campaign every 5 to 7 years. So we can do the math and realize that it's been more than 5 to 7 years. We could have had 2 campaigns since our last one. So that brings us to Launch Out, which will be before us all in the annual conference of this year, which is just the approval to begin the exciting work of what this campaign might bring forward. The best introduction, perhaps, might be from our bishop himself, and he's here live, but first, we're going to see him on video with his introduction and welcome to Launch Out.
When you stay along the shore, you cannot catch many fish. But when you go deep...
And you thought having a bishop with a bobblehead was cool. Now we have one with a fishing net. I invite you to hear these words from the Gospel of Luke in the 5th chapter, beginning in the 1st verse. Once, while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw 2 boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way away from the shore. And then he sat down and he taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. May God have a blessing to the hearing of that holy word. I'm going to invite the bishop to take part in our conversation today. As he describes it, it's us doing a dance together. I told him I don't dance well, so he can lead. But as we continue to work our way through the PowerPoint campaign, I just want to lift up the vision of... Stop the video now. I find myself often in the place of those disciples. You want me to do what? And I yearn for Jesus to say to me in the midst of all of the anxieties I face in the world today, inside and outside of the church, do not be afraid. That's the vision that I pray that we can hold on to, Bishop, as we continue forward. I'm going to have you advance the slide. It'll help guide our conversation. And Bishop, I can lift up this, that the point of the campaign is this, that we will create faith-raising opportunities, and we will connect with people in new ways. As the bishop said in the video, this is not about an apportionment plan or replacing apportionments. This is about envisioning things that we can't do now that God is calling us to.
Well, that video is a Grammy Award. So I'm expecting that prize gonna come. The lunch hour, another word that I keep murmuring it in my own with my prayer, did die. Lunch hour, but truly that God called me and you to go deep dive. When you are to stay in the shallow water, you will regret. It is that our time after time I reflect myself, I could have done that, really that way, dashing into, venture into. Oh, I can risk take that moment. I had lots of moments that I felt I was chicken out. I was staying in the shadow. I stayed in the shore, not jumping in. So I think this is invitation that is coming from these leaders from the annual conference. The annual conference in Wisconsin are experiencing tremendous growth everywhere. Of course, culturally, there are lots of things in our outer look. We are, sometimes we say, we are losing our people, our pew is emptying it, and we don't have enough energy or enough vision. There are lots of also that conversation around that too. But last 5 years in Wisconsin, God planted a tremendous opportunity tremendous moment that God created. And we've been done that together. You all remember my bubble hat is everywhere. Even in the museum, I heard. That when we really did it for $1 million campaign with the Imagine No Malaria. But by the way, we raised it over $100,000 more. We reached $1 million goal together because we believed in that future together, right? We believed it. Yes, we can make difference. Yes, we can offer. Yes, we can fight for this killing disease of malaria. We had such a great gift we received from the people all around. Even young Sunday school kid. And in the kitchen, in the church, parking lot, even in the main street, everybody engaging in the fundraising. Church had like a mosquito net everywhere, and they put into the enter and out fundraising event and all. It was amazing that we did it. As a denominationally, we raised it $76 million for Imagine No Malaria campaign. Amazing that our church in mission front, we are making tremendous impact to the world. I hope that you're proud of that church. I hope that you really say that this church is remarkable. When I was in Philippines, after Typhoon Haiyan, we erected 300 house and then couple school. When I dedicate, I cut the ribbon with the paper. When people say, Uncle is a hope for our life and our country. Many people say, because of you, we are here. When I was in, the Haiti, one of the ID low barrel of the very poor neighborhood. The gunshot is happening in the evening, but I was there. Even people lined up for buying mud pie. Mud pie. They're making mud pie for the nutrition. When we were there, we walked with them, we pray with them, we cry together, and we say that we're going to construct that society together. People say, United Methodist Church, you are the hope for our life. Believe it or not, God is using tremendous mission opportunity for all us all. Here in Wisconsin, yearly, almost more than 1,000 people are being trained, clergy and laity. They've been in Institute of Congregational Development, Institute of Congregational Development in Hispanic Virgin, Learning Leaders Academy, Spiritual Formation Academy, Faith Alive, Laity Convocation today, Day of Power with the Bishop. There are tremendous learning opportunity everywhere. Coaching, networking happen, and all the process that we do together is a conference. We see God's amazing momentum, that tipping point God created. This campaign is really bring the line under that our Wisconsin and pushing together so that we can rolling our life together to the next level. Yesterday we heard it through this whole panels, how beautiful story you heard, right? Would you say amen? Amen. They are saying it in front their own street without anything but with faith. They visit house to house. They knock the door. They invite in. They are creating new faith community everywhere in Wisconsin. Latina Hispanic Pentecost Emergency Initiative. We'll create 22 churches now. We're going to create 50 churches soon. We have planned for new ministry everywhere. Well, Jorge Mayorga is our director of the Convocation Development. He and all the cabinet and all the leaders are dreaming right now so that we can plant, so that we can reach it, Jesus Christ gospel to young people, diverse people, and all people in different ways. We are offering right now first tier, second tier, third tier. Of course, the fund for this discipleship fund becomes such a benefit for us, so we can continue working on the new ministry. And right now, currently we categorize almost 17 as a new church in Wisconsin. We're going to hit that 50. We're going to hit that 100 into the future. That's the vision that we are inviting our church to do. Would you say our church is dying? No. Would you say our church is slowing? No. There's so many ways that the unheard of it, miraculous, transforming story everywhere. I think that's why we come to this launching our campaign. See, how many churches you can raise your hand, do food pantry in your own church? Look at that! Look at that! Can you look around there? Almost more than half of our church already did food pantry ministry. How many churches have community garden in your own backyard in your church? Yes, raise your hand. Look at that, look around. See, I am privileged to travel everywhere in Wisconsin. Every church altar I hold in my hand and Thanksgiving offer I offer to the God. But 100 churches are step out and making their lot as a farm ground, gardening, and offer 100 lot to the neighbor. Poor is not just the poor. We offer them that significant ministry, mercy and justice ministry to the poor. This campaign we're focusing on to gather more resources. We will hear from more into what is the exact portion that we are talking about. Hopefully we can set aside the grant for all those churches, those who will wake up to the reality, to serving the community with the pantry, gardening, some special ministry to the poor, even night evening offer for the shelter and clothing ministry, healing, restoring ministry for the drug, that addiction, in all different ways we're going to offer. We hope that we can give some authentic way to support for the children home in Miraki, North Scott, and Harbor House in northern part, so Wisconsin can be really swarmed with it, such excitement, and we are making impact to our own neighborhood. That's the dream here. I want you to hear that clearly. I know last week one of the national news was HIV patient in the nationwide, the Milwaukee is the largest population. You heard of that? It was a shock, my heart. But we're going to fight back. We're going to offer the best offer for so that our society will change because we are here. We're going to keep focusing all the church inviting to turn around so that they can add the worship, they can add the Bible study, they can add the prayer meeting, they can add all different formation, they can add. So you can say, church is reviving, church is rising it up, church is getting stronger, church has a mission to do. That's the vision that we are. So we will create faith raising. We will continue to connect people in all different creative ways so that our church will be the impact making, apple making, Where are you going to go? We're going to hear one more step more. What is the plan that this team needs? In this annual conference, we will go. And we will go on. I personally planted my vineyard leaf in this fall, actually, September through November, that I thought I'm going to be out. But because of God's timing for this campaign, I canceled it. I decided not to take it because when we run, we're going to go deep, right? So deep dive, I'm ready. I hope you all ready too.
Thank you, Bishop.
Yes.
Thank you, Bishop. If you could advance 2 slides, if you would, to a slide that says our 3 priorities to ensure a vital future. So how is it that we start to put flesh and bones on the vision that Bishop just described? What we found out at annual conference last year is that there was excitement and agreement with the vision, but not enough specifics. We have identified 3 areas, and when I say we, it's the team, it's the bishop, it's the cabinet, and a large group of collaborative leaders in our conference, to identify 3 key areas that this faith-raising, fundraising campaign is designed to address. The first one, revitalization of existing congregations that desire life and growth. The second is new faith communities to reach people who don't currently relate to our existing communities and ministries. And third, mercy and justice ministries as collaborative opportunities in every community. When we think about the first one, the revitalization of existing congregations, every one of us is a part of an existing congregation. I presume that everyone in this room is part of an existing congregation. What happens when you're having trouble with your computer, your Netflix, your cable system, your satellite dish? What do you usually get told to do when you're experiencing technical difficulties? Boy, all sorts of responses. We'll call the Geek Squad. That's nice, but it doesn't work with my metaphor here. Okay? But I did hear reboot. Yeah, unplug it. That's our son. He used to work for AppleCare. When we call him with a problem, and he says, well, unplug it and plug it back in again. That's essentially rebooting, right? If you have an existing congregation, you're not ready to throw it out in the garbage heap, but every once in a while, the things that we have been doing for years and years and maybe decades don't work anymore. We need to update the system. We need to unplug and replug. We need to reboot. Revitalization of existing congregations is allowing congregations to do the deep discerning work to say, what are we called to do in this community? Because I don't know how many different congregations we have in this room. We are not all the same. You may have noticed that. And the differences are deeper than how big our church is, or how many people worship, or how many services we have. We serve different communities, and therefore God needs different kinds of congregations. One of the ways to do that is to help congregations to do this work. And so there's a significant part of this that's designed to revitalize the congregations of which we are already a part. To help congregations be flexible. To help them look at new ministry strategies. To help them look at new and alternative congregational structures. To do ministry appraisal and assessment, to explore different models of leadership and worship, and to discover different partnerships across other congregations or within their communities. This hits us where we all now live, all right, the revitalization of existing congregations. Think of all the people who are not part of an existing congregation, and I'm not talking about just in the United Methodist Church. What's our current membership to the United Methodist Church in Wisconsin? How many thousand? 50, 60, 70,000. I don't know what the number is. I don't know how many people are a part of a faith community in Wisconsin, but there's a whole lot who aren't. So for people who aren't already in a congregation, another major emphasis of this campaign are new faith communities to reach people who don't currently relate to existing communities and ministries. Which is another way of saying people who have no prior exposure to the gospel of Jesus Christ, the transformative power that can bring to their life, their families, and their community. It might be people who have simply never been exposed. It might be people who have had negative experiences in other churches of which they have been a part, whether it's in our denomination or others. It might be people who feel culturally excluded because they live in a community in which they are an ethnic minority and churches don't seem to speak to them figuratively or literally. It might be there are lost generations, as there is in our church, the missing generation, whether it's Gen X or millennial or post-millennial or however you want to describe it. If there's going to be a Methodist movement in Wisconsin in 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, it's not going to just look like the congregations that are currently in this room. New faith communities. And the third major emphasis is mercy and justice ministries and ministries with the poor. You heard Bishop allude to some of these. You know, John Wesley talks about acts of piety and acts of mercy, and there are acts of mercy that Christ calls us to, and let's face it, they can be hard work and they can cost money. And so another third major emphasis of the Launch Out campaign is to shift our mindset from ministry for people to ministry with people. An anecdote Tina Hinson shared with us, United Methodist Children's Services in Milwaukee does wonderful work in the community in which they find themselves. She was asked to speak in Kenosha not long ago, and what the folks in Kenosha told her was, wouldn't it be great if we could start a United Methodist Children's Ministry in Kenosha? And Tina said, well, yes, it could. And Racine, and La Crosse, and Madison, and Eau Claire, and Wausau, and Green Bay, and Reedsburg, and on and on. Now, whether doing that institutionally is the wise thing to do, or whether trying to support local people from doing this kind of work is the approach, regardless, it's not just the institutions that we now have, like Harbor House, or Children's Services, or Northcott House. It's anticipated that this campaign will help support those initiatives that we already have in place, but a much broader vision is to bring mercy and justice ministries to all who are within our state's boundaries and reach. In short, those are the three focuses of this campaign. I'm going to have you go one slide back, if you could, actually. Would you thank our team back there? Our translating team, our audiovisual team. There is an underlying current of all three of those areas, and it's this. I want everybody to raise their hand. Everybody in the room, raise your hand, would you? Okay. If you are not a leader, drop your hands. Put your hands back up. So that was a trick question. All right? You put your hands down. You know why you're leaders? First of all, because you're here. You could have been somewhere else last night and today. Right? So partly is you show up. You know why you're a leader? Because you're a part of the Church of Jesus Christ. That makes you a leader. You may not be your trustee's chair. There might be some of you who aren't even a formal member of a congregation yet. You are a part of the Church of Jesus Christ. That makes you a leader in your community. Because you have a life that aspires to live according to the gospel, to help God create the kingdom of God wherever you are. That makes us all leaders. And some of us are behind the scenes leaders. We're better. Some of us are in front of the scenes leaders who people would wish we were behind the scenes. We are all leaders. And so regardless of what three towers or what three baskets or what three emphases of this campaign are at hand, the underlying factor is leadership is key to effective mission and ministry. And I'm not talking about just the elders or just the preachers or just the bishop or just the cabinet. When you see leaders, think you. It's one thing to have a vision, it's another one to be equipped. It's not enough to want to know how to read, you have to learn how to read. It's not enough to want to lead, you have to learn how to lead. And it's increasingly complex to lead in the culture that we live in today. My father was a pastor, and he's no longer alive, but I always want to ask him, how did you spend your week back in the 1960s as a pastor? Because I have a suspicion that what he did is that he preached, he taught Bible studies, and he visited people in their homes. And he did not have to work that hard in the communities he was to get people into the door. Now, I'm over-romanticizing that I'm sure there were challenges back then. All of us, lay and clergy alike, lead in a culture that at best can be indifferent to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, leadership development for laity and clergy is part of all three of these priorities. So, you want to get to the nuts and bolts, right? Go back forward two more slides if you would. We asked all the boards of agencies, the cabinet, all of the current appointed and elected leaders in our conference to dream. And a guiding question would be, Deanna, I need to know how much time we have. Okay, I wasn't sure when the next session started. That's fine. Okay. The appointed and elected leaders of this conference were asked to dream with essentially, what could you imagine our Wisconsin conference doing if money weren't the issue? Ha, you said. Right. We've had those same conversations in our local churches. We have those conversations at our dining room table in our house all the time. And so the leaders and boards and agencies and folks put into this dream pot all of the possibilities that we could accomplish. And then the launch out team met about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and they prayed to discern in those three areas, that was determined would be the framework: new ministries, revitalization, and mercy and justice. Where could we most make a difference? And so this is the shape of the campaign. This is not a budget, friends. This money right now exists only on paper. This is the goal of this campaign. To designate $2.48 million of a total campaign amount of $6.8 million. 2.48 for Mercy and Justice Ministries, as we just envisioned. $2.92 million for new ministries. You have to help me out on CSB. What is that an acronym?
Conference Strategy Board.
Thank you, Conference Strategy Board. So, see, we can't escape that institutional language. We just want to hang on to those acronyms because we're good Methodists, right? That is currently the work that falls under Conference Strategy Board. But we're talking new ministries. Reaching people who do not currently have that relationship or that setting in which to experience the gospel of Jesus Christ. And lastly, $1.15 million for congregational revitalization. And then, out of the whole of $6.8 million, a relatively paltry $250,000 to make it happen. You might find this encouraging. We're not going to make this happen because that's not our expertise. We will enlist the work of a group of persons who do this kind of work to help us strategize and reach the most effective way to fundraise and faith raise as part of this campaign. The initial $60,000 that was apportioned in 2016 for this project gets folded in to become part of that $250,000. I'm actually going to invite an opportunity for questions momentarily, but I want to just offer some specifics on how some of these areas might come about. And this is just going to be an example. It's not an exhaustive list. So as you look at those numbers, for example, and I'm not even going to know what all of these ministries are, under Mercy and Justice Ministries, one of the proposals is $150,000 for prison ministries, $300,000 for new Mercy and Justice Ministries that do not currently exist, $1 million to support current Mercy and Justice Ministries. The Board of Ordained Ministry, which has responsibility for leadership and development among clergy. One of their initiatives is for cross-cultural competency, because every year when you staff parish committee fills out a form that says, what has your congregation done to prepare itself for a cross-cultural ministry? And if you're like my congregation says, well, we're going to cross that road when we get to it. Guess what? More than a third of our United Methodist clergy in this state were not born in this country. Multicultural ministry isn't a hypothetical, it's a reality. But what can we do to help churches, congregations, and leaders in the clergy themselves? It's a great idea. Let's become multiculturally competent. The Board of Ordained Ministry designated $90,000 as part of this campaign to help with cross-cultural ministry. Recruiting new leaders, that's another responsibility of the Board of Ordained Ministry. $305,000 designated for recruiting new leaders. The list goes on, and again, this is a working list that brings us to these numbers.